Greetings and salutations. Welcome to season 4, episode 3 of the Essential Aromatica podcast. I'm your host, Amy Anthony, owner of NYC Aromatica. Before I go any further, I want to acknowledge that I am yet again making two-part podcast here. There is the audio version, which is available on all podcast platforms as a podcast would be, but also there's a video version that is on my YouTube channel, which shockingly is called NYC Aromatica. So for take your pick. You'll be hanging out with me in my office. Pretty laid back here. Got a candle going, got some tea. So let's jump right into the actual podcast episode. But before I get into the nitty-gritty of this episode about poetry and authenticity, this is all sparked by a candle, by the way, pun intended. Just a reminder, because there's no commercials on this podcast, this is a passion project of mine. I get to do my own commercial. So I'm the owner of NYC Aromatica, bringing aromatherapy expertise to New York City's workforce through aromatherapy awareness workshops and, more importantly, experiences. To experience is to really feel it and see the real deal, right? To smell it, to feel it. So why do I do this? So New Yorkers can integrate real aromatherapy into their lives, not scented candles, we'll get there later, not bad incense, etc. Real aromatherapy to decrease stress and tension, increase clarity, energy, and promote overall well-being. And the coolest part of that is if I can speak with 20 people in an office space, ideally a really nice room with views of, space, sky, because that's a pretty cool part of living in the city, not some windowless conference room. That's when you really need aromatherapy. If I can reach 20 people there or 10 people, those people leave differently with new information. Go into the subways, they go home to their parents, they're going out for, dinner with friends. They're different. It spills just like the classic butterfly effect. So that's what that's all about, my little non-commercial for what I do. So this episode has two parts. I thought it would have three, but I'm saving Yarrow for the next episode. First, the authenticity and honesty of questionable products, such as scented candles, like the one I recently saw labeled, quote, Palo Santo. Uh, and later on is the world of lavender and a special aromatic sonnet with a connection to, you guessed it, Hecate. If I see Hecate, I stop and step into the mystery. If you've listened to a few episodes, you know I have a thing for Hecate. I might as well be her. Maybe I am reincarnated, but I'm just not aware of it yet. Ha ha ha. So, as I wrote here, one day I'll further understand my pull towards Hecate. Maybe I won't. So, as we move through these topics, we'll see how they are intricately woven together, much like a spider spinning its web, one of Hecate's, we'll say, animals. So, what connects Palo Santo and lavender? Let's find out. And I'm acknowledging just one more thing that I do write out my episodes because I think when I write, I read them over. I'm like, how does that sound? So that's why I have a piece of paper in front of me and I'm reading. And I don't memorize this. I'm not an actress. And these are unedited, by the way. So part one, Palo Santo and authenticity. So this ties into the last episode of Essential Aromatica that I was lucky to have Dr. Kelly Ablard on, who founded the Aramid Institute, and sustainability is a huge part of that, of the Aramid Institute, of the work that's done. And sustainability, as we know, is a larger and larger and larger part of the conversation to consider as the world is already so global now. The essential oil market is billion trillions of dollars, right? Because it's just not aromatherapists that work with essential oils, of course. It's flavor and fragrance industries, not just perfume, right? We're talking about food products. I think about spearmint chewing gum, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a bit of a tangent. So that episode happened. It was a lovely recording and basically December of 2024. Now we're in 2025. And just a few weeks after that conversation, um, I saw this scented candle, and I'll get into that at Saks Fifth Avenue. Their outlet centers. I saw this scented candle, and I was just, oh gosh, it made me want to have this episode. But in line with that, I watched the Aramids webinar on Palo Santo, and I have to do a special shout out here. If you join the Institute, I don't think this webinar is free. You have to be a member. The webinar is called Palo Santo, the Sacred Wood of Ecuador, Challenges and Key Role of Indigenous Traditions and Conservation Efforts. And on the webinar was, of course, Dr. Ablard with Raphael Parducci, I believe it's the fifth, Yvonne Mosler, and Dominique Gaillard. And this was happened on September 18th, 2024. So back to sustainability and this Palo Santo, in quotes, candle that I saw. On January 2nd of 2025, I know that because I took a picture. I was in the checkout line at Saks Off Fifth Outlet in Riverhead, New York, and saw a soy candle proclaiming on its label Palo Santo. No way, I said. If you know me, I'm a cynic and I'm like, oh, it's one of these. Oh, and I get all on my high horse. So, of course, I smelled it because, of course, that's what you do. And there was no way genuine Palo Santo essential oil or other extract was in that candle. There's just no way. If there was, it was barely there, maybe at 0.05%. So, there is no way. So A, the oil is so monoterpene heavy, so rich in monoterpenes that the molecules are just destroyed by looking at the flame. And yes, I lean on hyperbole from time to time. I thought that was pretty funny to say that or to write that. B, Palo Santo is from a distinct part of the world, Ecuador, let's say, and the plant is adapted to that distinct climate, and it's an integral part of the local ecosystem. It helps create that local ecosystem. So also it's from a really unique part of the world, this really interesting dry ecosystem right next to the ocean. And the oil is distilled not from the live tree, but from dead, decayed wood. So that webinar is really informative that I mentioned. You can also find other information on Palo Santo online from other reputable sources. I can't speak today. It must be the really cold weather. So the point is, this isn't a plant that just grows anywhere abundantly, like, let's say, lavender. This plant, Palo Santo, this tree is highly adapted to its specific environment. If I tried to grow it here on Long Island, it would probably like look up at me and be like, I hate you so much. You just killed me. So let's say like lavender is adaptable to many locations, rosemary, yarrow, goldenrod, common juniper, and the mints, my goodness, just forget about it. You can put mint, if you give it just slightly decent conditions, spearmint's gonna be like, oh my gosh, this is the best, or peppermint's gonna be like, oh my gosh, or Monarda, yay, but you get the point. So I wrote here, yeah, all plants have preferences, some are more forgiving than others. So there we go. Okay, with all that said, if I bought this candle, what am I getting? What am I breathing in when I'm burning it? The label says, and I think the label, I'm going to make it the picture part of this podcast episode. The label says, hand poured in the USA, small batch, all soy wax. So there's holes in this. There's marketing gloss. It's feel good marketing. And God bless the person, people, the company that made this candle. I mean, you got into Saks, but then again, it's being sold at an outlet center. But I should watch what I'm saying. I'll put my foot in my mouth. I think I already did. So there's holes in this, there's marketing gloss. And I've made candles and taught candle making workshops and I've stopped. Yes, there's a class on my website. I put it up there because the content's created, but also in the class, I talk about things like this that I'm mentioning in this podcast episode. So I stopped teaching and doing this, especially scented candles. And when I create scented candles, it's only been with essential oils, never fragrance oils. And you really step back and look like, why am I doing this? This is not sustainable for all of the essential oils it takes to put in one little candle. So let's just back step to the little label there about, let's say, soy. Great. Soy is a cash crop. It's a subsidized market, and a lot of it is GMO, whatever, good or bad. Just if you're thinking about GMO, a lot of the soy out there is GMO. And if you're going to buy organic soy wax, you bet your bottom dollar that's going to be pretty expensive compared to other soy wax. And that's a big topic. So check your labels. Ask people if you're really into soy wax, what am I getting? And it's a trade secret. A lot of folks probably won't disclose what's in their soy wax they're selling you. Um, so anyway, let's leave it at that. Once it became subsidized and supported by the government, it was abundant. It was easy to find, and most plants create wax. So it was this abundant crop. You can take those waxes and find something to do with them. So great, right? Great. So soy is definitely cleaner burning than paraffin, which is not great for us. It's cheaper than beeswax. Some may say it's more ethical than unethically sourced palm oil. We can start getting into mixes with coconut oil again. Sustainability, what's the ethical harvesting? I don't know. This is stuff I think about, but I'm not deep in the weeds, let's say like Dr. Ablard is. That's why I'm trying to get more up to speed. But here's the thing. Soy needs stabilizers in it, just like many waxes do, like paraffin does too. But real soy wax, when you work with it, and I learned the hard way, it's really lumpy and ugly. You melt it down, you work with the melting point and all that, but once it sets, it's lumpy. So you need to put stabilizers in there. I'll call them conditioners, but a lot of this is proprietary. So you really have to be a chemist to start to work with these waxes to make them clean burning, look pretty, all that kind of good stuff. It's Soy is not naturally smooth. So I wrote here chemistry magic is added to smooth out the wax and stabilize it. But all this little sidebar on soy is kind of beside the point. Back to Palo Santo. It takes a lot of fragrance to put in a candle for there to be effective flow. And the word came to mind of siyah in perfumery, when the person walks in the room and they're like bathed in perfume and they're like, oh God, I'm getting a headache. And they leave and you can still smell it. In candles, you call that throw. You really want to smell that. The vapors have to travel and permeate the room. Just thinking of that, I'll call it a badly perfumed person that is just, you still smell them after they're gone. Some people think that's a good thing, but obviously, I think you could tell where I stand on that, but we're all entitled to our own opinions, I guess. Um, so anyway, it takes a lot of fragrance to put in a candle for there to be effective flow. The combustion process is burning up this fuel. Even with synthetics, you're adding by volume 5 to 8 to 10% fragrance. Now think if I'm putting in a 4-ounce candle, 10% of that of essential oil, or 8% of that is synthetic material. That's a lot. So what am I breathing in there, right? What am I breathing in? I'm pretty certain there are no natural aromatic components in that candle, naturally derived, as in synthesized or obtained through the distillation process, or even the CO2 process, etc. So if there were, it should be very expensive, and it wouldn't work very well depending on the chemistry of the essential oil, the CO2 extract, etc. And all that aside, it's not sustainable for how much plant material it takes to obtain an essential oil. My opinion, humbly or not so humbly, it's wasteful to put 6 to 7 to 8% essential oil in a candle to get a sufficient scent load. Just smell the essential oil, one drop of the oil, the one drop of the Palo Santo. You're going to get magic from that. And then the whole thing about burning a candle, and behind me, you'll see that's a beeswax candle. Um, Like, what are we doing, honestly? So obviously I saw this candle and I was on this rant and I really wanted to share it because we have to really think, what are we putting in our bodies? And there's so many things to think about endocrine disruptors. We need a lot more data. We as the humans are the experiments. The animals we live with are part of the experiment. So, see, I'm getting ahead of myself. So back to this candle, the Palo Santo candle. From a cost perspective, it makes more sense to incorporate synthetics. Remember, I was just talking about I need 5, 6, 7, 8% of that quote fragrance in there to do have an effective scent load. So synthetics make a lot of sense. They're really cheap, really cheap. But why would I want to breathe those in? I don't think the mass market is really thinking about the sustainability and ethical use of essential oils in candles or the ethical use of including synthetics in candles. We want to sell, right? And it's fine. Like, I own a company. You want to make money, right? Like, the company has to sustain itself, but you make your choices, right? So again, what am I breathing in when a scented candle is burning? Also, this fragrance is not regulated. This is a blessing and a curse. A blessing because we can easily find ingredients. I can buy virtually any essential oil I want in the United States. It's not so easy to do that in other countries. So that is a blessing. Also synthetics. I could find this stuff as a candle maker. I can go and source synthetic materials. They're pretty easy to find. So another thing, another blessing in quotes to protect your business so we can formulate our own products and we don't have to list all the ingredients, the ones that are proprietary in quotes and part of our quote fragrance. So I think this is a curse because fragrance is a blanket term and it's protected as a proprietary trade secret. So again, this is a blessing for some, a curse for others. I, as the consumer, I don't know what's in that candle, that Palo Santo candle. I'm taking the risk of burning it. I don't know what I'm breathing in. Can't say it's all bad. Again, we need more and more research, but we know on the rise, there's lots of data showing about endocrine disruptors in a lot of things in our body, personal care products, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to include candles in that. So, which is, again, this is great for the creator to have our trade secrets protected, but then again, what am I breathing in? I'm not asking for full disclosure of all the ingredients, am I? Maybe I am. This is interesting to think about. So, what's the takeaway here in this rant on this podcast episode? Let's just ask these questions to ourselves and make the decisions of, do I really need to have that scented candle in my home? Maybe I can choose to do something else. I actually have this candle in back of me as a prop. I usually don't burn candles. When I do, it's for special occasions or sometimes during dinner when I have dinner at home with my spouse. So that's part of the ritual. And again, they're unscented. So, my question is, what do you think about that? Not about me burning a candle at dinner, but about this whole conversation. You probably have thoughts about scented candles or Glade plugins. I shouldn't have said that brand. Just again, these scented products that you're like, what's in that? Interesting. And why am I plopping Palo Santo in a candle when it's again likely that it doesn't even smell like Palo Santo when I smelled it. So that's why this started this whole tirade. So yeah, this is important to share. I have written down here, this is important. Again, what am I breathing into my lungs? If it's a body or topical product application, what am I putting on my skin, my largest organ, with intimate connections through the capillaries that go directly into my bloodstream? Fragrance molecules are so small and they go to so many places and can attach to all these scent receptors. Forget scent receptors, receptors throughout the body. It's not just quote scent receptors having to do with the literal nose on our faces and the other associated infrastructure that is really close to our brain. Um, so this is a rabbit hole, but it's obviously an important one to me. It's something I've been thinking about for a long time. I used to be very curious about candles. I mean, we all love candles, don't we? Humans, we love fire. The fire element is very important to our being a human, right? Fire for heat, fire for illumination, but now we have lights, really cheap lights. We can buy ring lights for so cheap to do these crazy podcast episodes. This is ridiculous. So I was really curious and I taught myself how to make them back when I was in college, and I was always continuing to just be curious. And the further I got into candles, the more I wanted to step away from fragrance candles. Even in college, I thought, I'm like, what is this stuff that I'm buying in these little plastic bottles? And also most types of wax, I was like, I'm unsure about a lot of the different types of waxes. And we know paraffin's not great for us. We know the lead wicks are not great for us. And those are kind of, they've been on the out. So, as I've said before, I don't really burn candles. When I do, it has meaning behind it. Not saying other people don't have meaning when they burn candles, but I'm really mindful of when I do burn them. You could still create a fire. You know, this is 2025 now, but you never know what can happen. Um, but let's see. We can argue about the ethical use of beeswax. You know, I mentioned I love and gravitate towards unscented beeswax candles. We can argue about the ethical use. We want to make sure we're not using wax from an active hive. If I have never gone so far as to contact the person that made these candles, like I used to get them from nuns in Portland, like, oh, you know, where's the wax from? And I didn't do my supply chain detective work. But when I think about this as a normal consumer, because that's who I am, this all comes back to intention. Why am I choosing to buy a particular candle? Why am I choosing to light a candle? Why am I choosing to wear a perfume? Why am I working with essential oils, et cetera, et cetera? So, what is the intention behind it? Yes, if you're like, this makes me feel really good, that's important to say out loud, you know, when we're doing it, I think. So, to wind down this section, this goes in line with candles and scent and cleaning products. I find myself thinking about cleanliness and cleaning. And often a lot of products were scented to mask the smell of the chemicals of the like the soap or something that didn't smell, quote, great. Or think of way back when the leather industry was tanning gloves and they didn't smell great. So guess what? Let's start to add neroli to the gloves. And it became this whole thing, right? Scented gloves, because we're trying to disguise other odors. So, and let's just keep taking it a step further, you know, into interesting things we put in our bathrooms now. So, cleanliness, the absence of germs and good health. That's to me what cleanliness is. It's space, you know, clean and healthy, has no overt, screaming, loud smell, fragrance, or aroma. It just doesn't. The smell of clean air, the smell of a newborn baby, the smell of a clean home, and the windows have been opened. There's an interesting smell, but also I feel like you're smelling negative ions too. I remember growing up having the windows open during spring cleaning, and there was definitely a literal difference in the air. And it had to do with smell, but it didn't. And I can remember it to this day. And when I was thinking about this episode, I have here that humans smell, right? We do. We're supposed to. Our body oils, but a healthy person has their smell aura. It's just them. It's there. But when there's a sickness involved, like something is different, it's bigger, right? It's something that's trying to get your attention. Like, oh, just like if I go a few days without showering and you've been sweating a lot, it's like, oh, guess what? We should tend to that, right? It's scent is communication. It's what it really is about is scent molecules are about communication. And back to this, a clean environment usually comes, like I said before, with airflow, no places for things to get stuck, no pile of junk. Cleanliness doesn't really have a smell. It's open, healthy, vitality. This is all fed by movement and air, the smell of wind, right? Wind without, you know, a fire burning or something, but real air moves, right? Stagnation starts to carry scent. Things get stuck. So when I think about cleaning products and clean candles and cleanliness and health and vitality, it's about movement. Movement in so many ways, moving the body, keeping our spaces clean. So maybe this is an inspiration to say, Amy, get off your soapbox or your high horse, or to maybe, clean. Do your weekly cleaning or your wintertime cleaning. So in closing for this section, it's still a bit more to share. In closing, I propose that synthetic Palo Santo, and again, that darn candle, I propose that that synthetic Palo Santo in that candle is dead in a much different way from real Palo Santo. This dead Palo Santo is only active in the way that it's going to take money from my pocket. It's going to work with scent memory and hedonic pleasure. Oh, I like the smell. This feels X. I'm creating a mood, a scene. Great. Sure, why not? But what are the actual benefits for my health versus the possible detriments by living with that dead Palo Santo? So that fake one, that candle, doesn't do what real Palo Santo can do. Not literally purify the air, not literally help kill bacteria in the air, not have the life molecules of the tree imprinted into the dead wood it is distilled from. No imprint of the lived life of the tree and the actual sense of the place, the ecosystem it lived, and everything that happened. And it's there in the molecules. You can I've smelled several oils in my life that just make me cry and bring up these images that I to places I've never been. So for what that's worth. So when I work with actual Palo Santo essential oil, I don't burn the wood. That webinar is interesting with Aramid. The wood again is from dead wood. The wood should not be taken from a live tree. When I work with Palo Santo, again, it's not often, it conjures great heaviness, great stillness, really great contemplation, and this type of heavy sadness that really needs to be paid attention to. Like I've always described it as the sadness of the entire world. And sometimes you need that energy to come in to work with, to help support you in some way. So there's times we need an ally like Palo Santo or an analog, something similar. We need to sometimes work with these heavy qualities and heavy contemplation. Like I think of myrrh. So when do I turn to that? Again, the wood the oil is obtained from is dead. Insects have eaten this, I believe it's ants. It could be other insects. There's death there. There's this dead wood, but there's still something in that chemistry. It's lived chemistry. The synthetic is so far removed from life. And yes, the synthetic is made of carbons and hydrogens and oxygenated hydrocarbons, sure. But there's absolutely, in my opinion, humbly, nothing life supporting in it. So, speaking of lighting candles and lighting incense and lighting sticks of Palo Santo and setting intentions. This is a reminder for myself too. Let's think about the things we're igniting and lighting and the intention behind that. When we're choosing to work with Palo Santo, think of where it's from, the tree it's from, the ecosystem, and what is really happening when we're burning the wood or working with the actual essential oil. So that's the end of that section. And I did share my full disclosure. I have a candle making class up on my website where I do talk about things I mentioned during this time together. And I also have a cleaning with aromatics class. And it's interesting when we choose to not work with essential oils. And again, clean has no smell. Or we can say the scent aura. So how does Palo Santo relate to lavender? That's an interesting question, right? So part two is lavender and Hecate. How do these fit? Lavandula. Here we go. Lavandula is the Latin genus for lavender, from the Latin lavar or lavare, meaning to wash. Imagine making a large amount of lavender infusion, a lavender tea, and adding it to bath water. Maybe you do this yourself. Lavender was an important part of cleansing in baths. Think back to the Roman times, the famous Roman baths. So, this was an important part of cleansing. Lavender, with its nearly ubiquitous smell, both genuine and synthetic, kind of hard to escape lavender scented products these days, which again, both are totally different. Many people I meet say they hate lavender, and I always wonder, have you smelled real lavender? Genuine lavandula angustifolia. Totally different. So lavender is very cleansing, as are most aromatics. That's part of the chemical makeup of the aromatics. Cleansing, antimicrobial, antibacterial. Lavender oil is rather gentle compared to some of the other essential oils. Let's say the really potent and very antimicrobial cinnamon or camphor, which can be very taxing on the liver, or even lemon. Lemon is incredibly cleansing, super cleansing. Like you put a drop on it's why do you think they have lemon scented, products? Like lemon itself is actually very cleansing. It's not even just the scent. Remember with aromatherapy, it's always about and, not just this smells nice or this smells like this. That's a whole other topic. So essential oils, thanks to their aromatic chemistry, are cleansing, antioxidant, antibacterial, all sorts of other properties. That's their nature. And it's not just lavender. But lavender is very kind. It has this quote gentleness to it that makes it quite universally acceptable. And the color purple might have something to do with it. And again, memory association with memories of lavender tea, maybe lavender products, synthetic or non-synthetic. The lavender is interesting in what I just noted. Lavandula angustifolia is a lovely, relatively gentle and pleasing cleansing plant to many people, not to everyone. Some people just really don't like lavender, and that's fine. It even comes across in the aromatic compounds, when we can smell the kind of gentle, soft quality to genuine, authentic Lavandula angustifolia. But there are several other lavenders out there, and lavandin is one of them that produces a lot of essential oil. It produces so much, but people just call it lavender. So what are you really getting when you're working with lavender? Just questions to ask. So there's several other lavenders out there, each with their own personality, their own chemistry. There's spike lavender, Lavandula latifolia, lavandin, a hybrid of angustifolia and latifolia. There's also stoicus, there's also dentata, and there are others. So when looking to work with lavender oil or buy the plant, opt for genuine, authentic essential oils over a fragrance oil. Be sure the Latin name is listed, both for the essential oil when you're buying the bottle, also when you're buying the plant. What is it? And then you can start to get into plant ID. Each plant has its own chemistry, which affects why one would turn to a particular essential oil. Lavandin is not worse or better than lavender, true lavender, or spike lavender. They each have their own qualities. So I have a whole class on lavender. Check out the show notes for a link to the class. Also, spend time with me out in the garden in the summer of a Long Island summer during that class is pretty hot and humid. There's also a plant talk video on lavender, where there's the usual poetry. We're outside hanging out, chatting with lavender and all that kind of stuff. But here's the real reason why lavender's in this episode, because it's time for a poem. So this is the whole reason why I wanted to share lavender during this episode in the first place. A few years back, I had the pleasure of spending time with Gabriel Moget, season 2, episode 11. The impetus for that episode was when I was introduced to Gabriel's aromatic sonnets, and in one of his classes, he shared the sonnet on rose. So that was an impetus for me to ask him to be a guest. Move forward to the present day. I was recently sorting through my notes and books and came across the NAHA 2016 conference proceedings. Happens to be right here. So, to be honest, I hardly ever cracked this open. I wasn't able to attend the conference back then, and the proceedings were given to me by one of my dear teachers. So I decided to actually go through the proceedings. It was between the time of Christmas and New Year's. And guess what? When I first picked this up off my shelf, I opened the page. I just opened it up, and guess what? The first page I opened to and the first words I saw were in the Garden of Hecate. So talk about synchronicity. I'm like, no way. So the full article title is In the Proceedings by Gabriel Mauger in the Garden of Hecate, the TCM energetics and, oh, I have a typo. The TCM energetics and pharmacodynamics of lavandula angustifolia essential oil in the integrated treatment of anxiety and anxious depression. 2016, copyrighted. So, very interesting article, very fascinating, always well researched, lots of data, evidence, clinical evidence, really cool stuff. Highly recommended reading. But that's not what this is about. So, I love Hecate, the archetype, and I was reading through this article and I'm like, where's the Hecate mentioned? And then guess what? At the end of the article was an aromatic sonnet. So on lavender. So I was so excited to read this many years, almost 10 years after the publication of this. And I got in touch with Gabriel just to share my joy and be like, I really want to read your sonnet. Checking in is okay if I do that. He's like, you don't need my permission. I'm like, great, but I'm just checking in anyway. So here is the poem. Lavandula, an aromatic sonnet by Gabriel Mauger. In the garden of Hecate, Stoicus grew, the lavandula known in ancient Greece, by root diggers cut when the moon is new, by the wise women brewed when coughs increase. As Hecate's tincture did the spirit cleanse, lavender lustrates the wounds of the past. It washes cares away when cares cling fast. Its fragrance a message of comfort sends. Like the mythic torch of the torchbearer, lavender banishes the fearful dark. Its tranquil rays illuminate the heart. Its dawn-sweet unguent uplifts the wearer. At life's stressful crossroads, this gentle guide calms and steadies us on our journey home. It settles the soul that restless did roam and restores the wholeness that fears divide. In the garden of Hecate, plants bestow medicines from nature's spring doth flow. Among scores of virtues, lavender bears an action that soothes our sorrows and cares. Lavandula, an aromatic sonnet. So that is lovely. I don't know, poetry just excites me. It's always I'm drawn to it because it's a different way of expression. So Stoicus mentioned, I mean, there's a lot of different things when you start to research lavender. Stoicus is like a mention of ancient Greece. What is Stoicus? If you look at Stoicus, the plant now and its essential oil, it's high in ketones. It's seen as a great pain reliever and great for respiratory issues, but not great for it could be taxing to the liver and the nervous system. But I just love the magic of the poem, the cleansing, see the wounds, washes cares away, fragrance, a message of comfort sends. He writes the mythic torch of the torchbearer, that being Hecate, banishes the fearful dark. Think of lavender for sleep for little children. You're afraid of the ghosts under the bed or whatever. Like lavender comforts and soothes. That's its chemistry. That's something it does, like the smell or not. This is lavender's signature. It settles the soul that restless did roam. Yes, soothes our sorrows and cares. It's just the band-aid of the essential oils. It's again rather gentle compared to some other oils. Again, we're not bathing ourselves in the pure oil, we're diluting it, we're working with it responsibly. But What a great poem. So thank you, Gabriel Moget. A shout out. And as we wind down, keeping the poetry vibe alive, the next episode without a guest, I'm trying to see my next guest to talk about hopefully more sustainability considerations. The next episode without a guest will feature yarrow, a continuation on exploring protective aromatics. And I'm excited to share a new poem about yarrow that I have been working on. Though as we part ways, I'll leave you with a yarrow haiku I wrote in the summer of 2020. She took off her shoes, danced in the moonlit garden, laughing with yarrow. Well, thanks for taking time out of your day, your night, whatever liminal space you're in between each second, each breath. Thanks for listening to this episode. Quite of a soapbox and a bit of a soapbox. And I have to say, doing this video thing is still a bit disorienting to me. It's really interesting to have that interface, whereas when you could just speak into a microphone and not have to think about appearances. Granted, I didn't dress up for this. I'm just like, oh, let's make the video and do it now. But anyway, thank you for taking the time. So next time, more on yarrow, much, much more. And in the meantime, please follow the Essential Aromatica podcast on your preferred platform. Hang out on YouTube. So fun. I'm waving. Yay. Who would have thought, right? Video, podcasts 20 years ago. Who would have thought? So find more aromatic musings on the web at nycaromatica.com. See links in the show notes to access all the stuff and things mentioned during this episode. And, well, signing off from Lower Manhattan next to One World Trade. Thanks for hanging out with me, and ciao for now. Bye.